You're listening to Soap Dirt, the latest in television entertainment news.
Hey, Days of Our Lives fans. Today, we're going to talk about the real reason some top Days stars really left the NBC soap. We're going to talk about Camila Banus, Tyler Christopher. We're going to talk about Ari, Peter, lots of people. These are some huge names that left fans very upset when they exited the NBC soap, and we're going to spill the beans on why they really left. But first, click that subscribe button if you have not subscribed already. Let's dig into it. First, let's talk about Camila Banus. She was the second and longest running actress to play Gabi Hernandez, and we saw Camila from 2010 until 2023. She wrapped shooting as Gabi in April of 2023, and her last air date was November of 2023. Now, the reason why Camila left her long-running Days role is a bit complicated. So back in 2020, there were signs of things going badly. She had just wrapped a long day shooting Gabi scenes, and Camila was in her car in the parking lot and then driving home, and she was just bawling about stresses backstage. In hindsight, could be Camila was alluding to the allegations about Albert Alarr's reported ill treatment of female cast members that eventually got him fired. But Camila Banus also said the move when NBC went over to Peacock streaming was a sign that she should start a new chapter in her life. And Camila also talked about her father's suicide. Now, he took his life right before she landed her role in 2010 as Gabi on Days. But Camila said her dad never got to live out his dreams, so she wanted to make sure she achieved hers. So Camila decided to stretch her wings professionally beyond playing Gabi Hernandez on Days of Our Lives. And Camila also talked about starting a family with her husband, Marlon Aquino. So there were several reasons that Camila Banus left the soap. Next, we're going to talk about the very sad tale of Tyler Christopher, who played the role of Stefan DiMera, which was created just for him. And Tyler Christopher left an indelible mark on fans of both Days of Our Lives and General Hospital, where he also originated the role of Nicholas Cassadine. And Tyler admitted his issues with alcohol addiction cost him both of his soap opera roles. He didn't choose to leave either soap, but his demons did it for him. He was released from his contract at General Hospital because of sobriety issues, but then he got a second chance from then Days showrunner Ron Carlivati, who knew Tyler very well because they worked together for years over at GH. Unfortunately, Tyler's addiction demons got the better of him on the other soap as well. When he failed to maintain his sobriety on the Days of Our Lives set, they had no choice but to terminate his contract. And Tyler's final episode as Stefan aired March 20th, 2019. 2 days later, Brandon Barash, also a GH alumnus, began appearing in the role. And Tyler Christopher admitted on the State of Mind podcast that he has alcohol addictions and said of his roles on both soaps that he threw it away. He said, "Nobody took it away from me. I dropped it." Tyler also confirmed his struggles with bipolar depression and ongoing efforts to get and maintain sobriety. And then in the ultimate tragedy, Tyler Christopher passed away at age 50 on October 31st, 2023, after losing his final battle with addiction. The Stefan actor's official cause of death was positional asphyxia and was ruled accidental, and terribly, terribly sad. As a side note, I interviewed Tyler several times, the most recent, not too long before he passed away, and he was honestly one of the nicest actors I've ever met. Just down to earth, very humble, very sweet, considerate, sincere, just a gentle soul, and he was very open about his demons and his struggles. Next, we're going to talk about Greg Vaughan's exit and return, and then his other exit from Days of Our Lives and his role as Eric Brady. Now, we had seen some big changes with Greg Vaughan that had him in and out and then back in and out again as Eric Brady. And not all of these had anything to do strictly with Greg Vaughan, the actor himself, or his character. Some of it had to do with his primary scene partner, Ari Zucker, as Nicole, who was in a romance with Eric. So in the summer of 2020, and this was nothing to do with Ari, Greg Vaughan announced that he was ending his run at Days. He said that he'd been thinking about leaving since 2017. This was during a renewal period where Days was negotiating with NBC to stay on the air. This was before the transition to streaming. And in one interview, Greg Vaughan said he felt like a glorified extra in everybody else's storyline, and said he and Arianne Zucker, who of course plays Nicole, weren't getting good storylines. Basically, Greg left because he wanted more screen time and better stories. Days did want him to stay, but he left. Now, he stayed gone pretty much through late 2021 with a few appearances here and there for storyline reasons. And then Ari Zucker's contentious exit seemed to have taken Greg Vaughan out with her. With Eric tied to Nicole and her being gone for good, that's the basic reason he's not front burner anymore. And unless they sever that Eric and Nicole tie, we're probably not going to get Eric back front burner. Victoria Konefel's departure is the one to talk about next. And the pandemic played a big piece in her exit. So she has left and is rarely seen. And of course, Victoria Konefal plays Sierra Brady Weston. Back in 2020, Victoria left Days of Our Lives to pursue other opportunities, but then the pandemic hit and stalled all the other projects. So she came back for a while, and Days, in fact, wanted her back on contract, but Victoria did not want to return full-time to playing Sierra. So back then, Victoria Konefal said the soap was no longer fulfilling her artistic integrity, and now she is rarely seen. She showed up for Beau's Coma Awakening and Family Funerals, but don't expect to see a lot of her. Now let's talk about Christian Alfonso and Peter Reckel's exit as Beau and Hope Brady. So back in 2015, Days killed off Beau Brady with a brain tumor because Peter Reckel wanted a break from the soap. And Salem being as it is, death is never a barrier to return. But Beau's death was sad and, devastated and outraged fans. And then 5 years later, Christian Alfonso announced that she was going to be exiting as Hope, saying she was relieved to go, and she didn't really plan to come back. But then Days lured Christian back to play Hope again on Beyond Salem in 2022. They woke Beau up from the grave and then pulled Hope and Beau over to the main Days show, and then wound up putting Beau back in a coma, and Christian pretty much left again, got off-screen mentions. Every now and then she'd be seen. But now he's awake, and Beau and Hope got a brief reunion and then exited again. So Christian was ready to write a new chapter in her life, and she seems content to remain mostly absent from Days. And Peter Reckel expressed an interest in them coming back, but he lives all the way in Alaska, so that seems a logistical nightmare, and there's no plans to bring Hope and Beau back for any front burner action. Next, we're going to talk about Brandon Barash's abrupt firing from Days of Our Lives for the second time. So when Tyler Christopher was struggling with his sobriety, Days made a snap hiring decision and brought in General Hospital alum Brandon Barash to take over the role of Stefan. And I would say definitely Brandon slipped in seamlessly. He was very popular with fans, but the writers had already written Stefan's death. Jada shot Stefan, and then they brought Brandon back to play Stefan's secret twin, Jake Lambert. Then they killed off the less popular Jake and gave Stefan his heart so they could bring Brandon back as Stefan. Fans were happy, but then things got messy for Gabi and Stefan, and Brandon Barash revealed that Days fired him in October 2024 mid-contract. So the first time he was fired was when they killed off Stefan, and then the second time was when Brandon said the writers just told him they didn't know what to do with Stefan, and he was called up to Janet Drucker's office and shocked and was just given a firing notice. Brandon has now said he won't come back to Days because this was the second time they fired him mid-contract. He feels like there's no trust there. And to exit Stefan, they had Vivian forge his name on divorce documents, and her flunky Yvonne shoved him in a trunk and shipped Stefan to Alamania. Let's talk about Drake Hogestyn now. We cannot talk about exits at Days without mentioning Drake Hogestyn, who played John Black for nearly 4 decades. The reason that Drake left Days of Our Lives was to fight a losing battle with pancreatic cancer. So his final episode as John Black aired September 9th, 2024, but he stopped filming months prior, very early in 2024, because he needed to focus on his health and that medical battle. Less than 3 weeks after Drake's final episode aired, he sadly passed away on September 28th, 2024. And then the soap brought in someone as a body double for the on-screen death storyline, and that actually taped while Drake was still alive, but he was too sick to work on the soap, and he signed off on the whole John Black exit story. And then Drake Hogestyn's character death aired June 2nd, 2025, months after the actor passed away in real life. And last, we are going to talk about Ari Zucker. Certainly one of the most controversial exits ever on Days of Our Lives, and she played Nicole Walker. This whole thing started early 2023 when a bunch of female actresses were fired or cut back to recurring, and allegations arose about executive producer and director Albert Alarr. And then came more allegations that he had behaved inappropriately towards Ari Zucker and other female cast and crew, and Ari decided to get vocal about it. So Days initially wrote her out as Nicole, essentially fired her, but she got a lawyer involved and they had to bring her back in, and she stayed for a little while. And then Ari was reportedly constructively fired during contract renewal talks by the show making lowball offers they knew Ari Zucker couldn't accept. These are allegations she raised in her ongoing lawsuit against Albert Alarr, Ken Corday, Sony, and others. And in February 2024, Ari Zucker said that her sticking up for herself and fellow actresses on Days of Our Lives is why they pushed her out of her longtime career on the soap. She held press conferences and she aired her grievances, and in the end, Days fired Albert Alarr in August 2023. Her lawsuit is ongoing.
Thank you for being a loyal listener. Follow us wherever you get your podcast, because you don't want to miss the next episode. Soap Dirt is on all the major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and more.